There's a fire inside every one of us that most people never tap into. It's the strength that shows up when the world thinks you're done, the power that rises when everything in you wants to quit. And the truth is, the people who create extraordinary lives aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who refuse to stay down. They've discovered a secret strength most ignore. Today, I want you to feel that strength waking up inside you. I want you to remember who you are, what you're capable of, and what becomes possible when you decide you're not done yet. The power of decision is where everything begins. Before the breakthrough, before the momentum, before the new life, there is always a single moment where a person decides, I'm done living the way I've been living. That moment is not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It's usually quiet, almost subtle, but it becomes the spark that turns an ordinary human being into someone unstoppable. People who never give up aren't superhuman. They've simply made a decision that quitting is no longer an option. No matter how things look, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many times they fall, that decision becomes a line in the sand, a turning point where the old version of them dies and the new one comes alive. When you decide, really decide, your brain shifts, your body shifts, your energy shifts. Suddenly you stop negotiating with your limitations. You stop arguing for your excuses. You stop waiting for the perfect day or the perfect timing. You take ownership, total ownership of your life, your progress, and your future. And once that switch flips, it's almost impossible to go back to who you were before. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become stronger, clearer, more determined. The people who never give up understand something most people don't. Uncertainty is part of the path, but decision is the anchor that keeps you grounded. When you're unclear, when you're half in and half out, when you're dipping your toe into your dreams instead of stepping in fully, the smallest obstacle can knock you off track. A rejection, a slow month, a criticism, a mistake. Any one of those can make you question whether it's worth continuing. But once you've decided, really decided, those things don't stop you. They may slow you down for a moment, but they don't break you. You're rooted, you have something inside that refuses to let go. Most people never reach that level of conviction because they're waiting for certainty before they commit. They want the guarantee before they take the step. They want the results before they give the effort. But the ones who never give up do it differently. They commit first. They leap first. They choose first. And then they build the capability, the skill, the strategy, and the momentum as they move forward. They understand that decision is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the doorway to a different life. Think about the times in your life when you've been stuck, frustrated, feeling like things weren't changing fast enough. It wasn't a lack of resources or talent or opportunity that held you back. It was indecision. It was being caught between wanting more and not fully committing to the actions that create more. The breakthrough only came when you made a determined choice, when you said, enough, this changes now. That's when you started moving. That's when you started creating. That's when your energy shifted. Decision changes your psychology. It forces your mind to stop searching for escape routes and start looking for solutions. It pushes you to rise to a higher standard, a standard where excuses don't survive. You begin to show up differently. You speak differently. You think differently. You carry yourself differently. You stop waiting for motivation and start demanding more from yourself. And that internal shift is what separates people who give up from people who refuse to. Every person who has ever achieved something extraordinary started at the same place, one decision that was bigger than their fear, their doubt, or their circumstances. Maybe they were broke. Maybe they were discouraged. Maybe no one believed in them. Maybe they had nothing but a vision in their mind and a fire in their chest. But the moment they decided, everything began to reorganize around the habits changed. Their focus sharpened. Their circle evolved. Their environment shifted. And piece by piece, their life began to reflect the strength of their intention. The secret is not to wait for the perfect mindset before you decide. The decision creates the mindset. The decision builds the confidence. The decision awakens the courage. You don't become unstoppable and then decide. You decide and then you become unstoppable. That's how those who never give up operate. They make the choice first, and then they let the choice sculpt them into someone capable of following through. The truth is, life will always challenge your decisions. There will always be days when nothing goes right, when your plan fails, when the results don't show up as fast as you hoped. But if your decision is firm, if it comes from a place of absolute certainty inside yourself, those days won't shake you. They'll refine you. They'll harden your focus. They'll deepen your commitment. Because people who don't give up aren't fueled by convenience. They're fueled by clarity. They know what they want, and they've already decided that nothing is going to stop them from getting it. That moment of decision, that's the birthplace of your transformation. It's the start of your inner revolution. And once you make it fully and completely, you unlock a part of yourself you may not have met yet, the part that is resilient, powerful, unshakable, and hungry for the life you were meant to live. And your life changes the moment you decide. There's a quiet power inside people who refuse to quit, and most of the world never sees it because it doesn't show up when life is easy. It reveals itself in the moments when things break, when nothing is working, when hope feels thin. That's where emotional mastery comes in, not the absence of emotion, not pretending to be strong, but learning how to use your emotions instead of letting them use you. The ones who never give up don't run from pain, frustration, or fear. They feel all of it, but they direct it. They turn it into fuel. Every one of us has felt moments when the weight of life was too heavy. Moments when disappointment hit so hard it felt physical. Moments where you wondered if you even had anything left to give. And in those moments, you're not weak, you're human. But the people who keep going, the ones who rise when everything around them points towards stopping, they've learned something incredibly powerful: emotions or energy. And when you master that energy, you can transform setbacks into strength. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever had came from a moment of heightened emotion, a moment of intense frustration that pushed you to finally change, a moment of deep sadness that made you reevaluate who you'd become, a moment of anger that forced you to stop tolerating a life that was too small for you. Emotion is a signal. It's telling you something. It's pointing to something that needs to shift. And once you understand that, you stop being afraid of feeling uncomfortable and start using those feelings as the raw material that builds your next level. Most people try to avoid uncomfortable emotions. They numb them, ignore them, or pretend they don't matter. But that only makes life harder. Pressure builds, energy gets trapped, and eventually the weight becomes too heavy to carry. But those who refuse to quit have a different relationship with emotion. They don't suppress it, they channel it. They sit with it long enough to understand what it's teaching them. They use fear as a signpost, they use frustration as a catalyst. They use disappointment as a reminder of what they're capable of and what they deserve. Pain can become your power if you stop running from it. When you feel discouraged, that's your system telling you to change your approach, sharpen your focus, or raise your standards. When you feel overwhelmed, it's a sign you're growing, stretching, stepping into a bigger version of yourself. When you feel afraid, it means you're standing at the edge of a breakthrough. Emotion isn't the enemy, it's the doorway. And here's the truth. Those who never give up have learned how to interrupt the emotional patterns that hold other people hostage. They don't let a bad day spiral into a bad week. They don't allow one setback to define their identity. They recognize when their mind is looping in fear or doubt, and they break the pattern. They move their body, shift their focus, breathe differently, speak differently. They understand physiology changes psychology. They don't wait for confidence. They create it by taking control of their state. They also understand that emotion is deeply connected to meaning. Two people can experience the same situation. One sees it as failure, the other sees it as feedback. One feels defeated, the other feels driven. The difference isn't the event, it's the meaning they attach to it. When emotionally strong people hit a wall, they don't say, "This is the end." They say, "This is the beginning. This is where I grow. This is where I break the pattern that's held me back for years." That meaning empowers them. It gives the pain purpose. And when pain is purpose, quitting becomes impossible. But emotional mastery isn't just about big moments. It's about the quiet ones too. The mornings when you don't feel motivated, the days you're tired, stressed, or uncertain, the moments when your mind is full of doubt. Those are the moments where most people negotiate with themselves. They talk themselves out of doing the thing they said they wanted. They listen to the voice that says, "Just rest, just wait, just stop." But emotionally resilient people hear that same voice and answer it with action. They move anyway. They show up anyway. They push through anyway. And that, anyway, is where strength is built. It's not that they don't feel fear, doubt, or frustration. They feel it fully. But they've trained themselves to act beyond it, to think beyond it, to live beyond it. They've conditioned their mind to remember who they are even when life tries to make them forget. When you learn how to use your emotions, you stop allowing moments to control your life. You become the one directing your energy rather than reacting to everything that happens. And once you do that, once you stop running from emotion and start using it, you become incredibly powerful. You become someone who cannot be shaken by circumstances. You become someone who rises no matter what hits them. And when you can turn your pain into power, you become unstoppable. There's a moment in every person's life when effort just isn't enough anymore. You try harder, you push more, you hustle, you grind, but something still feels stuck. And it's in that moment you realize the truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. The people who never give up, the ones who keep moving even when the world feels heavy, they aren't operating from willpower alone. They're operating from who they believe they are. Their identity is aligned with the outcome they want, so their actions become automatic, natural, consistent. They don't have to force motivation. Every day, they live from a place where winning is simply part of who they are. Think about how powerful identity really is. Everything you do, everything you tolerate, every decision you make flows from what you believe about yourself. If deep down you see yourself as someone who always falls short, then every challenge will feel heavier. Every setback will look like proof that you were right. But when your identity shifts, when you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who grows, someone who becomes better no matter what, you start responding to life differently. It's not positive thinking. It's not pretending. It's a fundamental shift in the way your mind organizes your behavior. People who never give up have made that shift. They've stopped asking, "Can I do this?" and replaced it with, "This is who I am." That single change removes hesitation, kills doubt, and erases the internal back and forth that drains most people. When your identity matches your vision, consistency stops being a battle. It becomes your default. Identity isn't built overnight. It's shaped through repeated choices, the way you talk to yourself, the standards you hold, the boundaries you set. You become the kind of person who doesn't quit by practicing the habits of someone who doesn't quit. Every time you keep going when you don't feel like it, you strengthen that identity. Every time you push through resistance, you reinforce it. Every time you break an old pattern, you sculpt a new version of yourself that is stronger, clearer, more capable. Most people fail not because they're weak, but because their identity is anchored to an older version of themselves. They're trying to create a new life while holding on to old beliefs. They're trying to step into their future while dragging the weight of their past. But the people who refuse to give up let go of that old story. They stop defining themselves by who they used to be and start defining themselves by who they are becoming. They choose an identity that elevates them, not one that limits them. And here's the thing, your identity can either imprison you or liberate you. If you identify as someone who's inconsistent, you'll act inconsistently. If you identify as someone who always struggles, you'll find ways to recreate struggle even when opportunities are right in front of you. But if you identify as someone who adapts, someone who grows, then every setback becomes another chance to strengthen that identity. You stop seeing obstacles as proof that you're not enough and start seeing them as proof that you're becoming someone more. The people who never give up aren't avoiding failure, they're redefining it. They don't see mistakes as the end. They see them as the refinement process. They don't see challenges as barriers. They see them as training. Their identity is built on resilience, not perfection. And because of that, nothing breaks them for long. When you shift your identity, your environment begins to change too. You start surrounding yourself with people who match or elevate your standards. You choose different habits. You speak differently. You walk differently. You make choices that align with who you're committed to being, not who you're trying to escape from. And slowly, almost quietly, your life begins to reorganize around that new identity. Not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. The most powerful transformation you will ever experience doesn't come from motivation or strategy. It comes from becoming the kind of person who does what needs to be done even when it's uncomfortable. The kind of person who honors their word. The kind of person who grows in the dark moments and expands in the difficult seasons. When you identify as that person, quitting stops being an option, not because you're stubborn, because quitting doesn't match who you are anymore. And when your identity aligns with the life you want, you become unstoppable. There's a reason some people stay locked in while others drift, get distracted, lose momentum, and then wonder why their life feels stuck. It all comes down to focus. The people who never give up understand something most people overlook. Focus is not just a skill. It's a form of power. It's a choice. It's a discipline. And it's one of the greatest tools you have for shaping your future. Because where your focus goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows consistently, results begin to appear. You can have incredible talent, massive potential, high ambition, but if your focus is scattered, if you're constantly pulled by noise, comparison, negativity, or the endless distractions of the world, you'll never access your full strength. Your mind becomes divided. Your actions become inconsistent. Your progress becomes unpredictable. But the people who refuse to quit have trained themselves to protect their focus like their life depends on it. Because in a way it does. Every day the world is trying to pull your attention in 1,000 directions. Notifications, opinions, problems, entertainment, fears, memories, everything is competing for space in your mind. And if you don't take control of what you focus on, the world will decide for you. But the people who never give up don't allow their mind to be hijacked. They choose what to give attention to, and more importantly, what not to. They understand that focus is about subtraction, not addition. It's not about doing more, it's about removing what doesn't matter. It's about creating mental space so you can act with clarity instead of chaos. It's about saying no to the unnecessary so you can say yes to the essential. And one of the greatest secrets of staying focused is understanding your mind will always follow what you feed it. If you feed it fear, it will find reasons to stay afraid. If you feed it distractions, it will crave more distractions. But if you feed it purpose, it will stay aligned. If you feed it clarity, it will stay steady. If you feed it momentum, it will push you forward even on the days you don't feel like moving. The ones who stay locked and don't wait to feel inspired, they create an environment where inspiration has room to grow. They eliminate the things that drain their energy. They adjust their surroundings to match their vision. They set routines that support their goals instead of sabotage them. And gradually, that structure becomes freedom. It becomes power. It becomes a foundation they can stand on, especially when life gets hard. Distraction isn't just about wasted time. It's about weakened belief. Every time you break your focus, you break your momentum. And every time you break your momentum, you reinforce the idea that consistency is difficult. But the people who never give up flip that narrative. They build consistency one focus moment at a time. They understand that every time they stay committed, every time they choose focus over noise, they strengthen their identity, they build trust within themselves, and they reinforce the belief that they are someone who follows through. Another powerful truth is that focus is deeply tied to your internal standards. People with low standards allow anything to interfere with their mission. They let other people's moods, problems, or behaviors derail them. They let doubt creep in. They take on distractions disguised as opportunities. They allow negativity to take up space in their mind. But people who refuse to give up have elevated standards. They don't allow everything access to their mental world. They protect their peace. They guard their attention. They decide what gets their energy. And that decision is what separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck. Staying focused doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you become more disciplined in how you respond. When challenges show up, instead of spiraling, you zoom in. Instead of panicking, you get intentional. Instead of feeling scattered, you get grounded. You remind yourself what matters. You align your mind with your mission. And you act from that place of alignment, not from fear or distraction. Consistency becomes easier when distraction becomes unacceptable. And there's another layer to this. Focus isn't just about your task, it's about your vision. The clearer your vision, the easier it is to stay focused. The stronger your why, the easier it becomes to ignore the noise. When your purpose is clear, your mind naturally filters out anything that doesn't support that purpose. You don't get pulled into every argument. You don't chase every shiny object. You don't care what everyone else is doing. You stay locked in on what you're building. The people who never give up understand that focus is a form of self-respect. It's honoring your goals, honoring your potential, honoring the future you want to create. And when you consistently direct your focus toward your growth instead of your distractions, you build an inner strength that becomes unshakable. Because the moment you take control of your focus, you take control of your life. There's a belief a lot of people carry that stops them before they ever begin. They think they need massive action every single day, huge leaps, dramatic changes, earth-shaking breakthroughs. And because they believe that, they wait, they hesitate, they procrastinate, they delay their own growth because the step in front of them doesn't look big enough to matter. But the people who never give up know something entirely different. Small, consistent progress is the true force that builds an unstoppable life. It's the daily wins, the tiny shifts, the quiet disciplines when no one is watching that create the momentum everyone else calls overnight success. Progress isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always feel impressive. Sometimes it even feels insignificant. But the truth is every major transformation in your life will come from a long string of small decisions you stayed committed to. One better choice, one better habit, one better moment of discipline, one step forward when you could have stayed still. That's the difference between people who give up and people who grow no matter what. Most people quit because they're addicted to the idea of instant results. They want to see big change fast. They want the reward before the repetition. They want the transformation without the daily commitment. But the ones who keep going, even when progress feels slow, even when improvement is barely visible, those are the ones who build a foundation no setback can shake. You don't build strength in one workout. You build it in the consistency of showing up. You don't build confidence from one success. You build it by taking action again and again, especially when you don't feel confident. You don't build a meaningful life from one powerful moment. You build it from thousands of small moments where you chose growth over comfort. And the beautiful part is, when you focus on progress instead of perfection, you remove the pressure that paralyzes most people. You stop worrying about getting everything right and start caring about getting better. There's freedom in that. There's power in that. When perfection is no longer the requirement, you give yourself permission to move, to try, to learn, to adjust. And that movement creates momentum. Momentum is everything. It's the invisible force that pushes you forward on the days you don't feel motivated. It's the energy that builds in the background while you're focused on just showing up. And the people who never quit understand how to create momentum, one small win at a time. They don't let a lack of immediate results convince them they're failing. They trust the process, they trust themselves, they trust the compound effect of their daily choices. They know that big results come from small actions repeated over time with consistency and commitment. And here's something most people don't realize. Small wins change the way you see yourself. Every time you follow through, even in a small way, you build self-respect. You build belief. You build an identity that says, I can rely on myself. And when you trust yourself, quitting no longer makes sense because you know you're capable of pushing through. Progress over perfection also means giving yourself grace when you fall short. The people who never give up don't pretend they're perfect. They don't pretend they never slip. They don't pretend they always feel strong. They simply refuse to let a setback become a stopping point. They don't throw away an entire week because one day went wrong. They don't punish themselves for being human. They recommit, they realign. They take the next step, no matter how small. The truth is, most people underestimate what they can do in a year and overestimate what they can do in a day. But those who keep going understand the power of time. They understand the value of patience. They understand that consistency turns ordinary actions into extraordinary outcomes. Small progress compounds, it grows silently, it multiplies in the background, and one day you wake up and realize you've become someone stronger, wiser, more disciplined, and more capable than you ever imagined. All because you kept choosing progress even when it didn't look glamorous. And you know what happens then? A shift. A breakthrough. Suddenly the things that once felt heavy feel lighter. The things that once felt impossible feel doable. The things that once required discipline now feel natural. That's the moment consistency transforms into identity. You don't just do the work anymore. You become the person who does the work. And once progress becomes part of who you are, the life you want becomes inevitable. There's a reason some people keep getting back up, no matter how many times life knocks them down. There's a reason they push through moments that would break most people. It isn't because they're stronger or smarter or luckier. It's because their why is bigger than the obstacles in front of them. Purpose is the invisible force that fuels people who refuse to quit. When your reason is powerful enough, your endurance becomes limitless. You don't rely on motivation anymore. You're driven from within. Every person has moments where the journey feels too heavy, where the setbacks feel too frequent, where the climb feels too steep. And in those moments, talent won't carry you. Excitement won't carry you. Even confidence won't carry you. What carries you is the reason you started. the purpose behind your effort. People who never give up have connected deeply to that purpose. They know exactly why they're fighting, why they're growing, why they're pushing, and that clarity becomes their anchor. Purpose gives meaning to the struggle. Without it, pain feels pointless. Challenges feel overwhelming. The journey feels random. But when you remember why you're doing this, who you're doing it for, what you're building, what you refuse to return to, everything changes. Suddenly the challenges aren't signs to stop, they're reminders to keep going. Suddenly the discomfort isn't something to escape, it's something to use. Suddenly the setbacks aren't failures, they're part of your mission. When your why is strong, you don't crumble when things get difficult. You don't quit just because the path isn't smooth. You don't run at the first sign of struggle. You breathe, you refocus, and you move. Because purpose gives you a reason to rise even when you're tired. It gives you a reason to stand even when you feel defeated. It gives you a reason to keep walking even when the road looks endless. And here's something people often forget. Purpose isn't always some massive dramatic calling. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's simple. It might be the desire to become a better example for your family. It might be wanting to break a cycle you grew up in. It might be the need to prove to yourself that you're capable of more. It might be a dream you've carried for years that you refuse to leave behind. Whatever it is, it becomes the heartbeat of your effort. It's what shows up when motivation doesn't. Those who never give up are intentional about reconnecting with their purpose. They revisit it constantly. They remind themselves what's at stake. They visualize the person they're becoming. They feel the future they're creating. They don't let their why become something they forget in the chaos of life. They keep it front and center. They let it fuel their discipline. They let it strengthen their decisions. They let it guide the direction of their life. Purpose also transforms the way you deal with failure. Without purpose, failure feels final. With purpose, failure becomes feedback. It becomes instruction. It becomes part of the process. You start to see setbacks as refinements, not punishments. You stop taking challenges personally and start taking them as opportunities to get stronger. Purpose gives you a different lens, one that allows you to walk through fire without losing yourself. Another powerful part of purpose is that it creates emotional endurance. When you're driven by something meaningful, you're willing to tolerate discomfort that others run from. You're willing to outlast the struggle. You're willing to grow through the uncertainty. You're willing to take the long route if that's what it takes. People who lack purpose burn out. People who are filled with purpose burn brighter. And over time, purpose shapes identity. You start becoming the person who is committed, not just interested. The person who is willing, not just hopeful. The person who follows through, not just dreams. Your why forms your backbone. It gives you a sense of self that isn't dependent on circumstances. Purpose becomes the voice inside that says, I won't stop, not now, not here, not after everything I fought for. There will always be days where the path feels unclear, where you question whether you're making progress, where fear tries to convince you to turn back. But when your reason is rooted deep within you, you don't turn back. You keep going because stopping would betray the part of you that knows you were meant for more. And when your purpose becomes stronger than your excuses, you become unstoppable.